As coronavirus spreads worldwide, many of us are now working from home, and that means video conference calls.
Pitching for business using Zoom, making presentations on Microsoft Teams, discussing your company's crisis communications over a Skype call.
So how can you present most effectively when you've been robbed of a face-to-face pitch? Presenting online is similar to being a TV presenter. When I read the news for Scottish television, I was often the only person in the studio. The cameras were operated remotely, so it was just me in a big, empty room. It's how many of us will be presenting at the moment, perhaps with the added distraction of a wandering cat or a bored partner. Can you take the bins out? There's an important fact to bear in mind from the outset though, and it's this. Everyone is in the same boat right now when it comes to presenting in business. But there are some key points to remember. Let's start with a subtle change you can make.
Often we can be tempted to look at the people on the screen in front of us, but notice the disconnect that's happening right now. The camera lens is your audience. You're speaking through it, making a connection with those who are watching.
The same rule applied for the breakfast news I would read in Scotland. Our audience was regularly in the hundreds of thousands, and I was sometimes tempted to look at the monitor below the camera. But that would have been a mistake.
The camera lens is your best friend. You're making eye contact with your viewers.
People across the world will be making this simple error of watching the screen as they present. Give yourself an advantage and build a connection based on your engagement with those watching. When presenting in person, we recommend the use of speaker's stance. That means starting with your hands together in a central position. As you present, they'll do what they want to do and then they'll come back to that central position. Our advice is the same for presenting online, except you're sitting down. Passionate people are animated and enthusiastic while making their point. They use their hands all the time.
They vary their tone to keep you interested. Their delivery is deliberately slower, and they smile.
You want the people to whom you're pitching to be convinced by your argument. Your delivery, use of hands, and general enthusiasm will help to do that. Allow your presentation to become three-dimensional, as opposed to the person whose pitch may read nicely but lacks a certain spark. Often, that spark is your enthusiasm. Let your body language do the talking for you.
It may feel forced and over the top to begin with, but persevere until it becomes second nature.
This is a simple but regularly overlooked piece of advice, and it avoids your conference call getting off to a clunky start. We did it before every single bulletin I ever read on live television.
We tested the microphone to make sure I was audible and coming across clearly. Then we checked that I was sitting in the center of the camera shot, and then we'd play through any clips or footage that we wanted to show.
You can do similar checks before you start presenting. Run a test call with the video conference software of your choosing and rehearse the technical side ahead of your pitch. It means you're familiar and confident with how it sounds and how it looks. And it avoids the awkward mid-presentation interruption of
Sorry, Colin, I'm having to interrupt you here. You're a little bit quiet. I'm failing to catch everything you're saying. Can you maybe move a little bit closer to the mic? Is anyone else struggling to hear Colin? Aye? No?
And just like that, an avoidable technical hitch has derailed your flow. Work out the kinks before you begin. We've all been there.
The webcam stopped working and you're unsure why.
It happened to me recently. We ran into unexplained technical issues before the conference call even started. The option to show my camera was greyed out, and so all that I was left with was my voice. But the change in delivery is simple. You're now a radio presenter. The body language and use of hands aspects have gone, so you've got to use your tone, pace, and vocal enthusiasm to convey your message. As a journalist at Radio Clyde, I knew I had a limited amount of time each hour to tell a story. So I chose my words carefully. I started with the most important piece of information for that audience, and I let my voice do the rest. That means a slow pace, an undulating tone, and using emphasis at the right times.
One final tip to remember when it comes to presenting online. With most video conferencing software, you'll likely always be in shot, regardless of if you're the person speaking. Zoom user Jennifer Miles learned this recently, much to her embarrassment.
It's a rule in the world of television as well. I would always assume that my on-camera actions were visible to viewers, just in case they were. So I had to behave as if I were on camera at all times. This means avoiding checking your phone,
because we can see you doing it and failing to pay attention, as well as yawning, which is always a bad sign, and even folding your arms.
What is your body language telling those who are watching? Of course, this rule goes out the window if your webcam is off or broken, as mine was recently. So I was able to stuff my face with chocolate as much as I wanted. At Pink Elephant, we're open for business. Media training, crisis communications, presentation skills, and more, all done by video conferencing. Send us an email today wherever you are in the world and discover how our 30 years in business can help you and your team.